and gentlemen, a very good morning to you all, and indeed a warm welcome to those of you joining us online for the next 2 days of Battery Innovation Days. Now, we're going to bring together numerous key players and experts from the battery field over the coming days, including representatives, of course, from the European Commission, the research community, policymakers, industry players, and end users, all with the idea of defining what the next stage of research and innovation priorities in Europe should be. We're going to tackle, we hope, some of the big questions, so I certainly hope that you've all brought your insight and curiosity and your enthusiasm and questions. My name's Jennifer Baker. I'll be your moderator over the coming days. Really, my job is to try and get the most out of everyone here so that you all feel you've had a very worthwhile experience. So please, when it comes to Q&A time, don't be shy to put your hands up and ask questions of our expert panelists. To those joining online, feel free to put your questions. They will be filtered through and we'll try to get to as many of those as possible in the time allowing. We really want to look into and define the aims of the research and innovation priorities in Europe. And that could be in leading edge technologies and battery materials and cell design, manufacturing, recycling. The whole life cycle is what we're going to attempt to look at. It's a really packed schedule that we have for you, and I think quite innovative as well. For those who want to follow online or those in the room who have their phones with them, please do put them on silent. But remember, you can share along using the hashtags BID for Battery Innovation Days or BID2022 or indeed BAT4EU. And we'll try and keep an eye on the social media aspects of what we're discussing today to keep people who aren't able to make it to the room or follow along all the sessions in the loop as well. This morning, we're going to kick off with a couple of keynote presentations, and then we'll go into a panel. After our coffee break later on, there will be parallel tracks, but I'll tell you a bit more about those as they come along. So with that, I am very pleased to share with you a keynote video that has been exclusively recorded for us by Maros Šefčovič, the Vice President in charge of Interinstitutional Relations and Foresights at the European Commission. Let's have a look at what he has said for us for the next 2 days.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, it is a pleasure to welcome you at the second edition of the Battery Innovation Days. I regret that I cannot be there in person at this important event gathering the entire research and innovation community for batteries in Europe. With the changing geopolitical climate, we need to accelerate our efforts to create an innovative, sustainable, and globally competitive European battery ecosystem. There is a crucial link between competitiveness and innovation, and research has been an integral part of the European Battery Alliance since day one. The EU is strongly supporting innovation at every stage, from long-term research to industrial upscaling. To this effect, we have provided an unprecedented level of funding under our flagship initiative, such as Horizon Europe and important projects of the Common European Interest, known as IPCEIs. Europe is well equipped to remain innovative and competitive in a global perspective. The Battery Innovation Days prepared by our 4 leading European battery research initiatives as BID2030+, Batteries Europe, BAT4EU, and the battery-related IPCEIs are a telling example of our strong research community working together on disruptive technologies that will be key drivers towards zero-emission mobility and sustainable energy systems. Looking to the work ahead, I see 3 main priorities for the European battery research community. First, given the urgent need to reduce our dependence on imports of critical raw materials, our research should focus on developing batteries using chemistries that do not require critical raw materials. Second, we need to ensure that scientific research can transition into industrial application as swiftly as possible to forcefully contribute to industrial projects developed under the European Battery Alliance. Third, we cannot afford to think in terms of Europe alone. While we should seek to play a leading global role, we also need to cooperate with our partners on developing clean technologies and more sustainable processes. Such international outreach would expand and enrich our strategic research agenda. I will stop here by applauding your excellent work in advancing European research and innovation on batteries. I wish you inspiring presentations and invigorating discussions at the Battery Innovation Days. Thank you.
Well, we thank very much indeed the Vice President for taking the time, although he couldn't unfortunately be here today. But we do have joining us from the European Commission with a presentation now on fostering European strategic autonomy via innovation. Please welcome Michael Lippert, the Director of Innovations and Solutions at SAFT.
Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you very much, Jennifer, for introducing the second edition of the Battery Innovation Days and moderating. You have a tough job over the 2 days, our conferences. Well, on behalf of Batteries Europe, on behalf of BIPA, and more generally on behalf of the research community, which I dare to represent, a welcome to all those who made your way to Brussels and all those who are connecting and will connect throughout these 2 days to our, as I said, now second edition of the Battery Innovation Days. Thank you also very much to all those who organized it and make it again, hopefully, a huge success. Thank you also very much from far away to Vice President Šefčovič, who has, I think, very much given the tone. Because what is the situation we are in? Many things have changed since our last edition, and we can say, well, what a year it has been. Due to the COVID recovery uptake, but more importantly, since the invasion of Ukraine, we have sharpened our sense of what it means to be energy dependent, or what we want to achieve with energy independence, and also what it means to be dependent on imported goods from other countries. Let it be cereals, or let it be raw materials for batteries, for example. We know that today and tomorrow the supply chain, our supply chain for batteries, will be very much under pressure. In the same time, and luckily, we can talk about the Repower Europe agenda, which has explicitly mentioned energy storage as a means to accelerate the energy transition and to foster renewables and the increasing amount of renewables in our energy mix. So this should increase demand for battery storage. And likewise, we already know that by 2035, we should have only zero-emission passenger vehicles and light vehicles to come to our roads, which again, and massively, of course, calls for new batteries. Last but not least, the work on the battery regulation is on its way. It's not totally finalized, but it will be a masterpiece directing many things in the industry, in this sector, but also for research and innovation. Now, in this scenario, what is the role of research and innovation? Well, first of all, and again, Vice President Šefčovič addressed it, it is about raw material supply chains. Yes, we do need to support the development of local supply lines for natural and synthetic graphite, for example. There are calls out addressing these specific points. But research also needs to address and to support the upscaling of raw material processing, methods, and whilst in the same time reduce emissions and waste streams. Furthermore, recycling, circularity in general is a highly important topic in order to get back the raw materials from recycled batteries. So here we have to build up the value chain to improve the processes and make them, well, at industrial scale and competitive. Last not least, we said it, research and innovation needs to support the development of chemistries that are less dependent on imports of critical raw materials. We know we will not make Europe totally independent from external imports, but we can contribute to reduce the level of dependency and mitigate the risk of being dependent on single critical raw materials. Secondly, the integration of renewable energy on the stationary sector. Research and innovation and our programs support the development of stationary storage and of course both for the short term and in particular more for the longer term with long duration storage technologies. Here again, we are thinking about stationary energy storage systems that are less dependent on critical raw materials in the area of flow batteries, for example, or sodium-based batteries could be candidates. And finally, we are thinking about the management systems of a single energy storage system, but also the way we manage in our grid multiple thousands of decentralized, more or less big storage systems that will be interacting with our electricity system, with the grid. On the manufacturing side, on the short term, it will be very much dedicated or oriented towards the mobility, the electric vehicle sector. Of course, we try to accelerate or contribute to an acceleration of the development of manufacturing supply chains in Europe. Digitalization is an important aspect, so globally, improvement and digitalization of the manufacturing process will contribute to higher productivity and lower environmental footprint. On the battery technology side, of course, we have been and continue to develop new lithium-ion, solid-state, and other future battery technologies for all kinds of mobility to reach a better, safer, and cheaper or more competitive batteries, of course. Here again, we're talking about battery management systems embedded in vehicles and globally supporting the research on integration of batteries in the structural elements of different mobile applications, with a very strong focus on cooperation with other initiatives and activities. Last not least, I mentioned the regulatory framework. Of course, research and innovation has to take into account, or should we say, has to even actively contribute to shaping the regulatory environment that will determine our future to a large extent. So we accelerate the implementation of hopefully meaningful rules through reinforced exchange of information between the Battery for You partnership, the 2.0 partnership, which is representing the vehicle side, and the GRC from the European Commission, thanks to a new trilateral agreement which we have signed and which we try to put into practice by now. And of course, we support the research necessary for the implementation of the battery passport. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is not an exhaustive list of the research agendas, which obviously cover many areas from raw materials to industrial uptake. The landscape of, say, bodies or organizations is multiple. As you can see here, they reach from raw materials through advanced materials manufacturing to end of life. And they reach from, say, fundamental low TRL research to making it happen on the industrial side, with organizations that are represented here and in particular in the roundtable that is coming right now, from BID2030 Plus, looking at long-term research, the ETIP Batteries Europe, together with BEPA and the Bat for You partnership, looking at technology benchmark, writing roadmaps and bringing them up to the level of or into the calls of the Horizon Europe program. But more than that, it is not enough just to do the research. We need to bring them into pilot lines. So we have LePlanet. We need to think about the industrial side, which needs to have strong political and financial support. Therefore, we have the IPCEIs. And globally speaking, we have the EBA250, which was the starting point of all these movements, providing global industrial value chain support. What we tried to do, and I think we have gone quite a good way over the past 12 months, is to consolidate all the activities, to work together. The Battery Innovation Days are an expression of this cooperation and global view we try to have and to bring forward. So the goal is to streamline this landscape, which does not mean to merge all these organizations, but to have a very strong cooperation, and in particular between Batteries Europe and BEPA. We have streamlined the processes over the past month with a goal to avoid duplication and to have a streamlined exchange of information. The workflows of both organizations have been integrated, and as a first step, we have created joint working groups. So rather to have each organization has its working group and doing its work, we have joined them, and they are working now on a common work program. We will also, so there are 6 working groups over the entire value chain. We will also implement cross-cutting topics such as education, sustainability, safety, digitalizations that will be led by Batteries Europe. And of course, the Battery for You partnership will continue to help projects with innovation uptake. Another point which we have, of course, realized, we must make sure that the innovation goes further and is brought to the industrial level. It doesn't help us if they are stuck at a certain TRL level, even with nice results. We need to bring them to the market. Well, this was some ideas I wanted to share with you to introduce the next roundtable, and with high pleasure, I'm looking forward now to my colleagues from the different organizations I have mentioned, and globally looking forward to highly interesting Battery Innovation Days today and tomorrow. With this, thank you very much, and I give it back to you, Jennifer.
Thank you very much indeed, Michael. That was quite a whistle-stop tour through a lot of points there, but I hope well appreciated and a good stage setting for our conversation. As you said, we are now going to go to our panel discussion a little bit ahead of schedule. We're going to talk about strategic orientation for the EU battery supply chain. So if I could please invite my speakers to come to the stage. Please. Highly coordinated. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. So to introduce, I will start from beside me. We have Francesco Giraldi, the R&D Scouting and Fundraising Senior Consultant at Flash Battery. Next, we have Philippe Jacques, Emery Managing Director and BEPA Secretary General at Emery, the Energy, Materials and Industrial Research Initiative. We have then Christina Edstrom, Professor of Inorganic Chemistry at Uppsala University, and also, as mentioned by Michael, the Director of Battery 2030 Plus. And then we have Ilka van Dalvig, ABA Policy Manager at EIT InnoEnergy. And last but not least, Uwe Seidel, Program Manager at IPSI Battery at VDE Innovation Plus Technik in Berlin. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a big topic we want to cover today, and how we become strategic is, of course, one of the things I think we heard mentioned by both the Vice President and by Michael in his presentation that is essential going forward. So, Christina, I'm going to start with you. Give me your overview on this topic. What do you think are the bottlenecks? What are the current barriers? How do we become strategic? How do we even begin to think about this momentous task?
It is momentous. And coming from a university and long-term research perspective, I think skills, education, have young people interested in this is so important. It's just as important as having the raw material secured for Europe. So we need really sharp people. And we need to really show how relevant we are. Because if you say we have a new master program in battery technology, which we just launched, the European students, they don't come, but the Asians come, Asian students, because it doesn't sound sexy. So I think that's actually a bottleneck, that we really have to show in our outreach how interesting this is and how stimulating it is, because we have so many challenges to solve. We have it along the full value chain. We have the raw materials, we have the long-term perspectives, like I'm trying to push them for Europe, that we have new ideas and new and dare to be a little bit blue sky and innovative, though we need to be some also in a realistic framework. This is so important to show that this is not only problems, it's actually fun as well. It's very interesting to go into something where you maybe can solve something. So I don't know if this was what you expected, but for me, skilled young people really entering the field and really see that they can make a difference for the society, I think will be beneficial for the industry in Europe.
Well, we'll try to make it very sexy and fun over the next couple of days. Okay, I see you nodding along. Give us your sort of opening perspective.
Yes, thank you, Christina. I think you phrased it very well. I think we need the new people, the young people, young scientists, but overall some messages that really tells us the story about electrification and batteries as a means for the green transition. I had marked 3 points on my list of bottlenecks and barriers. Materials, of course, one of them, skills, another. Then also the machinery sector. But coming back to this narrative that we need for Europe, what we do right now, we're in the process of establishing a new industrial value chain in Europe. We from BID2022 support us, and we see, however, that there is sometimes a lack of understanding and a lack of acceptance for new industrial projects in Europe. And we see this across the entire value chain. From mining projects that we need for the raw material that we actually need to dig out of the ground, but also for other industrial establishments like active materials, like new cell factories that meet local opposition because they're established in areas where they do not have a legacy of industrial activities. And I think this is one of those things that we need people to tell the story that this is actually a good thing for Europe, for the green transition, for job creation as well, to support these issues. So permitting would maybe also a 4th point on my list.
Philippe, I think there's a microphone there. Build on this idea of where we need to identify the bottlenecks or the barriers, please.
Is it working? Yeah. Well, you know, I think that indeed there are so many challenges and so many priorities that it's really very, very crucial to align and to have all the community really talking and aligning these priorities, because we cannot do everything at the same time with the same level of engagement. Why? Indeed, we have to. So it's very critical to be able to align all the relevant people coming from research, from industry, also from more the institutional side, and really to be able to identify how we can really change the mindsets, and that's the point that was raised by Ilka. It's maybe not the most, the one where innovation and research can help the most, really changing really this not in my backyard issue. But still, even on this one, we can contribute because we are entitled and we have to develop more respectful processes and really having industrial activities that will be also more respectful for the environment and for the citizens who are living close to there. So also demonstrating that now we have the technologies that really can solve all these issues in a way which is also respecting the environment and the citizens who are close to these installations is really key. So education, skills, changing the mindsets, identifying really what are really the appropriate technologies and developing. We are talking a lot about these critical raw materials and how really we can reinforce the autonomy of Europe and not being so dependent. Just being able to develop, I think we don't have to be, to think that we will find the magical drop-in that will allow us to replace one critical raw material by something that is totally available, and we will get rid of this issue. But we have to develop a panel of technology that will really reduce the pressure on such critical raw material. So that's definitely one of the priority that well, was mentioned already by Mr. Safcovic, that was mentioned by Michael Lippert, which is definitively high on the agenda. Developing better and more respectful processes, reducing the carbon footprint, of course, that's also seen systematically in the different topics that we want to address.
Uwe, Philippe there says we can't do everything all at once, which is true, but at the same time we have a demand. You know, the title of this panel is about strategic orientation. How can you be strategic and prioritize at the same time? What's your view?
Nice, yes. Yeah, welcome everybody. It's a very interesting question and discussion so far, and I guess we have to be clear about the situation that we still are talking about a very young ecosystem of battery development and production in Europe. And I represent the IPCEIs, and they're starting 2018, 2019, so just 3 to 4 years ago. And this is the aim of these IPCEIs, is really to combine and to align what Philip mentioned, industry partners and partners from different levels of society together on one issue, and the issue is to promote and make the batteries of Europe really livable and to realize them in a short time. So I'm very happy that we have the chance to now meet in person, because that is, in my opinion, the main issue for collaboration, and we already mentioned, and we have here at the panel the different stakeholders of the European ecosystem, and this is as well, of course, the main idea of the IPCEIs, to work together to change spillover effects, to change knowledge, and to make clear that we are a strong European ecosystem. So with the IPCEIs, or IPCEIs, how we call it, we have more than 50 companies under one umbrella from 12 member states from the EU. And we are allocating more than 6 billion euros from the different member states funding budgets, and unlocking with these 6 billion euros, more than 15 billion of private investment. And this is, I guess, very important as well to solve all these questions and problems which we mentioned so far. And but that's not the only factor. The money is not the only factor. I think the main issue for the IPCEIs and for all these organizations we represent here is that we find really possible ways to collaborate in the European way, and with partners from outside, of course, to solve these problems which were already mentioned.
Well, thank you, Uwe. Francesco, tell us about the work that you're doing and how much of what you've heard from your fellow panelists is chiming with you.
Yeah, so I'm representing a manufacturing company, a small startup that then in 2015 became a large enterprise. And we are actually one of the leading lithium batteries in Italy with 300 megawatt hour. So the idea, I really think you're right. So the main problem that we have is to find a skilled labor force. So this is one of the main problems. Despite the fact that our average employee is 30 years old, so we are pretty young, we really struggle. And most of the time, this is a battle between companies that are going on the same way. So we are fighting against each other, and we are not really collaborating toward the promotion of this ecosystem, because, let's say, we are stealing employees each other, and it's not fair. And from the other side, I think what is really missing is also to be very clear with the end user. So always more with the adoption of new chemistry, with the adoption of larger capacity batteries, fear is coming up. And so safety and circularity became really important. And it's not just something that you could apply to one application domain, but it should be transversal to all the applications. So you should study technologies that fit and are customized to the several applications. So for our application domain that is non-road mobile machineries, it's crucial to have a set of technologies that are specifically taking into account different chemistries, different needs of the application, and we could provide and suggest our end user the best portfolio, also taking account price, because again, being in the market, you need also to provide solutions that could be sold.
Well, let's turn a little bit to the question of strategic partnerships. Philip, I'm going to ask you to start on this. How do we achieve efficiencies? How do we have more coordinated partnerships?
Well, I think that was touched already a little bit by Michael, that we are really working more and more hand in hand between the different initiatives which are really animating the ecosystem. So really what we noticed, and I think it was normal at the beginning that a lot of initiatives were launched independently one from the other, really to start really mobilizing all the people along the value chain and along the different in the different communities, on research on one side, industry on the other side, and so on. And now we are really working to bring all of them together. So we are not willing to merge them because each of them has really a specific role, but much more to agree on what is the specific expectation from each, what is the raison d'être of every of these initiatives, so that really we avoid duplicating the efforts. At the end of the day, you know, those who are contributing to these different initiatives and really elaborating the priorities, the roadmaps, and so on, it's you are these guys. So and in the past years, we were inviting you to join working groups from one initiative or from one another initiative on the same topics, and giving you sometimes the feeling that you were duplicating the efforts and repeating the activity. So now really what we are trying to do is to really to arrange the pieces of the puzzle, like I like to say, in a way that really makes sense, and that what is delivered by you is really delivered in the proper way, so that really everything is structured in the most efficient way, and that at the end of the day we have the full picture of what are the needs, the challenges that need to be addressed, to identify what are the possible solutions, what are the priorities, what are the gaps that still need to be addressed from an NNI perspective, and then really based on this common understanding, really to build the appropriate work programs under the BID4EU partnership, which is maybe the flagship, but it's not the only one. There are also other partnerships which are much more focused on the applications, like 2.0, for example, for clean vehicles, or the waterborne partnership for maritime transportation, and others. And we need really to also to connect and to develop the synergies with all these additional and complementary tools. So it's really a great networking effort and coordination effort between all the existing initiatives. And I mentioned here only those at the European level, but what we want to do is also to connect with the national initiatives, so that really we build the complementarities, and that we achieve really the maximum impact for the benefit of the industry at the end. I will not take the talk on the long-term research that is also totally crucial if we want to get the also on the long term, that our industry will still be really working with the appropriate technologies, not only with those that are needed now, but still the one that will be on the market in 10 years or 20 years from now. So it's not only about immediate short-term activities. It's also about the long-term activities, but I'm sure Christina has a strong opinion on this one.
Ilka, I think you wanted to jump in there.
Yes, I think I can only agree with Philippe, but I want us to take 5 years back when there was virtually no battery industry existing in Europe. And when we started to work with the European Battery Alliance, I think coming back to your question on strategic alliances and the importance of them, what we started to do is look at the entire battery value chain. And I think this is a differentiator for Europe that was very, very important. When we started to work on this industrial value chain and invited people from the mining sector, from car manufacturers, from the chemistry industry to recyclers, I think many people appreciated those meetings that were really cross-sectorial and brought them together from the supply of materials to the offtake segments. And I think in many of those meetings that we had when we developed the first strategic action plan on batteries, most or many of those strategic alliances started to form when they actually met across their sectors. So this is one important thing I would like to take with us. It's the value chain perspective that we should not forget. And I think it's been taken up beautifully by all our research initiatives as well. The other part when we developed this action plan was actually to put together academia, industry and policymakers and made them work together. So this is also a strategic alliances to work together on the same goals. Now BID2022 is mainly about industrial initiatives, and we have now an entire set of different research initiatives. I won't go into this, but I think those cooperation, collaboration, communication, it's very crucial for building those strategic alliances.
Uwe.
Yeah, I would like to add one strategic point as well. We are strong in Europe, not 5 years ago, but today I think we're much stronger. And we are a reliable partner in the global discussion about batteries. And one example is the involvement of the Global Battery Alliance, which started actually from Europe, which of course very close interaction with the US and Canada. But as well, after the last 3 to 4 years, these Global Battery Alliance developed very well and set standards for responsible batteries and defines standards and levels of human rights declarations and promotes health and environmental sustainability, which is as well a non-technical issue, but important for the whole ecosystem and makes it special for Europe and for maybe the relation with the US and Canada. So for me, it's very interesting to see. We started in this business 2019, as I said, to see the development and to see how strong the European position is recognized by other partners in the world.
Christina, what's your reaction to that?
My reaction is that looking at the long-term research and the actors we have in our Battery 2030 Plus family, we do have the international recognized scientists on board. And I think Philippe talks very much about animating the battery landscape. And our role for Battery 2030 Plus, as I see it, is that we have formulated a roadmap with really taking into account the digitalization of the research, both experimental and modeling, and providing tools that we hope can support the whole battery community in Europe when it comes to research, but also industry. Battery 2030 Plus consists today 101 organizations, academia, RTO, industry from 24 countries in Europe. That's very spread. And we are very, very honored that our roadmap, our long-term visionary roadmap, that is to enable the future battery chemistries with our methods, is accepted by the European Commission to have really open calls so that people can apply to and form consortia to. And we have now since 2 years back, started to work and really try to implement what we have on our roadmap to real results, which will push our roadmap further. And this harmonization of the landscape comes in the Batteries Europe and BEPA also working on a long-term roadmap. And we have already in the existing long-term roadmap tried to merge these two perspectives by saying what chemistries are we expecting when, and with the Battery 2030 plus roadmap saying how should we do it to come there. And I think this is something we will work even further on, and I'm very happy to say that Battery 2030 Plus has earmarked funding coming up also in the next framework period, so that we will actually enlarge and have a larger community with us. And what we can then provide is that we are trying to provide excellent seminars, for instance, to highlight the strong scientists we have in Europe in sort of more popular, broader lectures that we put online in our webpage. They are very, very used around Europe as educational tools, because I think we could be an inspiration to attract the young people. We had yesterday an annual meeting where we attracted the future research leaders. They have worked on their own manifestos to see what they think is important. And by doing that, we hope to build a community where we say, it's in Europe, it's happening. It's here, it's fun to be. And it's in this sector we should be. So that is what we could provide in this ecosystem. And I think that's rather strategic. And of course, we also want to really come with real results, not only talking about it, but really have true action.
Francesco, I mean, we've talked a lot about the strategic nature of partnerships. One of the things, of course, that they can do is help to facilitate knowledge sharing and best practices. And what do you feel is the best way to go about that?
Yeah, so I think also the previous speaker already spoke about public-private partnership. So I think, and I strongly believe that this is a way, because to avoid that academia speak only to the researcher and industry speak only to their clients. And so this also, I think this research project really fulfills this scope, especially in our case as partner of the EPCA Summer. We has been enabled to get some strong liaison with the local universities in several cities in Italy, and to be supported in this digitalization process. Because one of also a problem and a bottleneck is the digitalization of our companies, and so we should fulfill really many constraints, not only technological, but in our case is also to try to define the future ontology of what the battery ecosystem will ask to us. So really this, I think it's, if we find a way to communicate it in a very easy way, I think this is the solution. In our case, we strengthen the collaboration with several universities that support, for example, us in trying to redefine our database. So we were starting collecting data from our battery system since 2015. And thanks to this collaboration, we are now resettling our server and to know better how to collect the data that our batteries are providing us in a proper way, and not just according to the scope of our company that was reducing the maintenance and the service cost. Instead, we are collecting data that could be leveraged and be useful also for the researcher. So this is a strong way, because for a small effort in our case, you know, just an update in a firmware, we are supporting the research to progress and to have real data from our system.
If I may?
You may.
On this one, I think there has been an incredible work that has been done already by Batteries Europe and Battery 2030 Plus on really what are the best practices, how to report data and results on battery performances. And really what we want to do is to leverage on all the funded projects under the partnership, for example, really to deploy these best practices, and that will really allow to accelerate both the sharing of knowledge, but also that will really enable to more and more rely on digital tools really to, again, accelerate the development of the new technologies. What we want to do is not to oblige the projects really to apply these rules, but more to convince them that that's the best way to go. And but we have really we have with this instrument, with the partnership, we have really the critical size really to make these initiatives really visible and really to deploy them much more quicker than without this kind of initiative. So I think that's definitively a big opportunity that we have today to convince people and to embark them into this good practices sharing. And of course, it's not, well, let's not be naive. I think the industry is also very concerned of keeping the proprietary information. Yeah. But we need also to develop the models that will allow to really to share this knowledge for the best of the different worlds and the different stakeholders, that at the end, really, everybody will be benefiting of the acceleration of this innovation process.
I mean, it's a little bit about a messaging that's going on here. Ilka, do you agree with Philippe that if we've got a carrot or a stick, it's better to convince people to come along and share knowledge rather than to beat them over the head with rules and regulations?
Oh, here. Yes, I absolutely agree to that. However, regulation incentives are also a good way of guiding development in a direction that I think we all agree on. So regulation and policies can be a very helpful tool in actually accomplishing what Europe has set out to be the guideline, I think, for us all to follow. But also, when it comes to regulation, we all know the proposal for the new battery regulation that is still under discussion. It's not approved yet for implementation. And I think also here the dialogue and knowledge sharing between the ones who decide on the policy and the industry is very crucial to really adapt it so it's becoming meaningful and not something that you hit people on the head. I think we're going to touch upon this. It's coming back to the materials question, for example, on recycling, where I think the regulation proposal is very ambitious on recycling quotas and requirements for the industry that I think everybody agrees upon. But we must be very careful also to introduce those regulations that the industry can adapt and actually comply with those regulations. There's, for example, when we are talking about circular material flows, a wish that we also only want to recycle end-of-life batteries and count this towards a quota of recycled material in the current version. And I think how idealistic this idea might be, it is not realistic to expect so much recycled end-of-life materials in the system yet. So there needs to be a time, and there need to also be a consensus, I would say, to see how much material will there actually be available to be recycled. And there are estimates that about 80% of the recycled material will actually come from scrap up to 2025. So also here, I think dialogue is important, and then regulation can be a very helpful tool to actually implement what we all want to achieve.
Well, since you've raised the issue now, let's stay with this question of, if you like, the full life cycle and the role of recycling. Uwe, what's your take in where that needs to be positioned as a priority?
I would like to add some thoughts about the collaboration of the whole ecosystem. We don't have to forget the governments in these discussions, because at the end we need the industry and the governments for financing all these ideas and to solve all these challenges which you know about. And in my opinion, and from the German perspective, we have the chance to address directly in our ministry about all these roadmaps and challenges you mentioned. I think it's one of the main issues for other member states to go into the discussions with governments and ministries, because we need further support from the European level and from the national level to solve these problems which we have. And the IPCIs are not a funding measurement from the EU. Their funding is coming from the national budgets. So that is very important for solving future activities. If it's in IPCEI 3 or whatever it is, we need the national budgets for to solve the challenges and the problems, and at the end to fix the whole entire value chain for Europe.
Well, Francesco, let me bring you back in again to pick up again on this question of the full life cycle, the entire value chain.
Yeah, in our case, again, we are dealing with a specific sector, so material handling in our case is not very much suitable for second life battery application, because let's say we exploit our battery up to now until almost the end of their life. But the main problem that we face is using very lithium iron phosphate chemistry. It's not convenient right now to recycle this chemistry. And also in the future, maybe we will pass to lithium magnesium phosphate cell. And again, these are very common material. It's not containing rare material, expensive material. So we need subsidies, because until the recycling technology is based on the current technologies, we will not be able to recycle this type of chemistries. And so to make it recycling not more convenient for just a certain type of chemistry that may be more suitable for only some type of application, we need to have a kind of cap on the cost of recycling that will make recycling equable on the different chemistries, despite the fact that some chemistries are more economic convenient for the recycler itself.
Christina, Uwe and Francesco have both mentioned their funding and initiatives to be promoting these. Where do you think, where do we look at in terms of incentives and funding?
I think it's interesting to look over Europe and see where the industries are going in Europe, and they are going perhaps in countries today that are not so research strong. So to have the scientists in those countries really benefiting from the industries and also for their educations, they need extra funding and initiatives to really be able to leverage on what's going on now. It's very, very different in the different countries with the national funding work. And I can see that in countries where really have strong research already and strong industry already, they do pick up on the BID2030 plus roadmap ideas actually and make national programs of them. You can see that in the Netherlands and in France, and you can see it in some of the co-fund PhD European projects like Destiny and so on. But I really think we should look at the whole of Europe and look at the parts of Europe where big factories are moving in and see how we can strengthen the ecosystems there so they really can have something to offer to the industrialization. That is my sort of European view on this.
Philippe, what's your view in terms of initiatives needed, acting, what's working, what's not?
Wow. Well, I think that you know, generally, people say that I'm quite critical and not very happy. I must say, in that case, I feel that we already achieved a lot, even if there is still a lot to be done. But we have already been very successful in setting up these different initiatives and now making them working really closer together. So that's, I think, already a great, let's say, a good start. Now we have to deliver. And one of the topics which I think needs really to be addressed as one of the next priorities is about innovation uptake. Really, how can we really transform, you know, we can say that all the projects which are funded by national or European fundings, they are delivering some seeds, but these seeds, you still need to mature them and to bring them up to the industrial level and up to the market. And I think that on this specific aspect, we still have a lot of potential, a lot of possible actions that really for me it's the next round of actions where really we need to put the focus. We are quite aligned now on how to really develop these roadmaps and identifying these priorities, but really how to transform really what is coming out of the research innovation actions of the different projects into something that really we be able to benefit to our industries. There is still a lot of things to do on this aspect.
Yes, I wanted to pick up on this one from an industrial perspective. I think a lot of things has happened since we developed our first European Strategic Action Plan back in 2018, I believe it was, and we have been tracking industrial projects ever since. We can see that on the cell production side, I think Europe is really starting to pick up momentum, and according to our analysis, I think Europe will be the second largest cell producers after China in 2025, which is quite a tremendous development. But we see that there's still a lot of gaps in other parts of the value chain that still need our continued attention, and in order to accelerate and really push this with concrete ideas also from the industrial side, where we of course pick up on the guidance from the research initiative, we will start this fall to update this strategic action plans in order to look how actually can we fill those gaps that are still make the European value chain dependent and weak in some links.
Uwe, did you want to add something?
I think it's would be very exciting to look 5 years in the future from today. We can't do that. We have roadmaps and ideas, but still, as Philip said, a lot of work to be done. I think I would like to add one aspect. What we're discussing at the moment is about the battery passport initiative, which comes as well from the battery regulation, but as well from the industry and from the discussion of companies. And we have one funding project in Germany, which is very open for European connection and collaboration, which is now trying to build up the indicators related to responsibility and sustainable practices for batteries production and handling. So I think this is one of the, of course, often mentioned in roadmaps and papers of the very important points for European strengths to build these battery paths as a European standard. And that would be, I think, a great help for the development of the ecosystem.
Okay, thank you very much. We've got about half an hour left on this panel, and I can see that there's some questions coming in online, but just to take the temperature of the room, can I get a show of hands who has questions from our panelists here? Anyone with any? Yes, we have a couple, one over here. Okay, in that case, well, I will wait for the ones to come up on screen from the online side, but if we could get a microphone over, I think there was one over this side, yes. And if you could just identify yourself and to whom the question is directed, please.
Steve Ellis from Dassault Systèmes. It's to the whole panel, but it's to Christina's point around making batteries sexier and the research sexier. I think, doesn't it have to start sooner? We've still got a secondary education system that concentrates more on oil refinery and teaching children about that, or ICE technology than it does about batteries. And if we haven't got them excited before they get to universities, then we're almost too late in the game. So how do we change the policy right at the beginning of the education cycle?
This is so important, and what we identify is that we have to train the trainers as academia, and that's something we put into our work for the next period, and we want to start now. And I know there are other European initiatives, one called All Buts, that's also into this, that we really have to make some curricula for the ones teaching the kids in the upper secondary school. But we also have to look at the course content, as you point out, because I looked at the Swedish one, and they are their the last period of the secondary school in chemistry. They are just studying life sciences. There is nothing about materials on this sector, and it's so much chemistry in this. And same, the physics part has also another kind of contact. So we have to look at this and prioritize that, really. I think you point at an extremely important thing. Train the trainers is really one would be on the top line to make this sexier. We will start this fall, really, to our first attempt with BID2030 plus.
Any other speakers? No, I think it's a consensus from the panel, is that right? I see a lot of nodding heads. Turning to our online audience, I see Lydia Tamellini is making some suggestions and asking the question about whether it would be a good idea for the EU to focus on specific projects. Also asking, coming up rather quickly, she's curious to learn how battery performance targets, specific energy and power requiring currently, are reconciled with decarbonisation targets in the EU R&I. How is this translated into the development of standards at the global level? It's a complex question. Who would like to tackle that from our panel?
It was so long. So
it was so long, yeah. So how are performance targets reconciled with decarbonisation targets in R&I? I think that's probably the distillation of the question.
Yeah, in the Batteries Europe framework, we now, there will be work to really look at the KPIs for performances, and BID2030 plus will involve, of course, in the long-term research, new battery chemistries and try to put KPIs on these. And when it comes to standardization and targets, there are standardization groups trying to work on batteries and sustainability issues. I know that we have some in the audience working at the UN level on batteries. So, but I don't remember the details on that, but we have the competence in the room, I know. So I think that's going on, and that is quite interesting discussions on how to regulate and what to allow, especially from a sustainability point of view, and how that will influence industry, and where can you put the sort of requirements not to sort of kill the industry in this sector. I don't know if you can.
I'm not quite sure if I directly answer to these questions, but I think circling back to the material issue as well, that we should not forget is a finite resource when it comes to lithium-ion batteries. Also, on the strategic dependencies mentioned by Maros, is actually looking at increasing the energy efficiency of batteries, simply doing more with less material. So I think in that respect, you could reconcile performance targets and what we want to achieve in decarbonization, not forgetting alternative battery chemistries as well. So that would be my reflection on that. Try to do more with less, and for that we need the entire research community to figure out how.
Yeah, and concerning the international level, the Global Battery Alliance is taking care of standards and these global issues. And there are standardization organizations involved in the discussion around the Global Battery Alliance about passport activities. And that's a good idea to be aware of these discussions.
Thank you. Questions from the floor here. We've one here, just down to my right. Oh, and then we've several in the middle. So far side, please.
First of all, I'm a big fan of this effort, and I'm participating in this effort toward the new batteries. But taking an advantage of this, the presence of such a experts here, I'm wondering, that's an open question, how you can see the most optimistic scenario of this whole effort, and how you can see the worst scenario. Because I know there's many alternatives, and we can do the research forever. That's the beauty and the sexy of this thing. But I'm wondering how you can see this Europe with the total success of the battery programs, and what could happen if we failed, if we were wrong.
Okay.
I can give a first try on this one. Well, the worst case for me is quite clear. If we are not developing technologies on our side that really would guarantee some independence from Europe, we will be moving from an energy dependency, from a fossil dependency to a technology dependency. And that's definitively, I think that the current geopolitical situation clearly highlights that we cannot live with that. We need to have some autonomy and to be able not to be fully dependent from other regions of the world. So that would be the worst case. If we are not able to develop some technology that would be our own technology, that we would be fully dependent on for advanced materials or cells or whatever from Asia or other regions, that would really put us again, put Europe in a very fragile situation. We are, I think, we are more or less experiencing that with the electronic sector already, and you know now that Europe has also given a wake-up call that we need to become again at least partially independent, and that's definitively for me the worst case. If we do not succeed and we do not deliver, we would be fully dependent, and that we could not live with that. The best case for me, let's be realistic, would be to secure a reasonable market share of the battery market that we really would be coming with these own technologies and not being dependent from others. So I don't know what is a successful market share. I think that if we can succeed to achieve something which is around between 30 and 50% of the market of batteries that would not be dependent from other regions, that would be a great achievement. But that's really my personal thoughts.
Anybody else like to be optimistic or pessimistic?
Well, I can be a bit pessimistic then. If the European initiative, I mean, we have very good Asian companies moving into Europe, but if the European companies that we put a lot of extra money and efforts in, if they fail, it will actually affect the research community a lot. Because it is an ecosystem and we are dependent on each other. And then we are back where I was in the early 2000 when people said to me, how could you do research on batteries? That must be so boring. Is this box you just buy and put in and it should work? And of course I knew better, but it was hard to motivate research funding, and it's not today.
I think we'll take another one just from our online questioning. Says that incumbents tend to have the upper hand. How do we facilitate this infrastructure required, including R&I, for SMEs, given that they have budgetary considerations? Francesco, I'm going to put you on the spot for that one.
Yeah. So let's say it's a bit our story. I was during the first meeting when the Italian ministry invited us to sit to the EPCA. Of course, we were a bit scared about, because we were like a company with 50 employees sitting together with larger company and multinational companies, and so let's say it's not something impossible to to sit and to collaborate in research with large enterprise. And I think my personal suggestion is you should not just focus on a specific topic. So of course we succeed to have battery partnership call, and a lot of resources has been devoted to that. But if you are an SME and you want to work on the ecosystem, you should also try to dig in other strategic goals to try to really create these bridges between poor research and application and the SME, European SME, that is our ecosystem, because at least in Italy, 70% are smaller SME with family structure, need really to invest more in research and to provide their skills that are pretty high valuable in this collaboration research project. So I think that there are several suggestions. So also there are cascade funding that could be used for this scope. So I4SM is a very good platform for SME to apply. And this is, I think, the good way to try to launch also small, medium enterprise in the research field of batteries.
Right, I think we had several hands I saw up. Right, well, one here at the back is probably quickest to get the microphone.
Hello, good morning. David Storer, I'm R&I Director at CLEPA, the Association of Automotive Suppliers. So this is a point that Ilka made at the beginning about the resistance in setting up new facilities to manufacture battery cells. So my question is, can you elaborate a little bit more on that? In particular, my question relates to whether or not it may be possible going forward to transform existing old industrial areas, looking also at the skills of the workforce that are present there. And I'm also referring a little bit to perhaps in the past, in the UK at least, the new car factories were built where older industries like shipbuilding were in decay. So I just wondered if you could elaborate a little bit more on that.
Yes. Yes, of so, yeah, now it's on. Thank you. And I think what we see in Europe when it comes to the establishment of materials manufacturing, as well on cell and packs production, we see already now that there is a co-location, or at least closer to the offtake segment, because it's also a question of emissions and costs to transport materials and cells around Europe. So I think it benefits everyone. There are already instruments at European level, Joint Transition Fund, just to mention one, that already looks at how you transform regions with a large fossil dependency and try to stimulate projects on clean technologies in those areas, which is also, I think, a very good direction that you give to those regions. When it comes to raw materials, however, it's sometimes a bit tricky, because you have your resources at a certain spot and you're not able to move them. So I think that is a complete different questions. When it comes to co-location, I think there are several benefits, in fact, also looking at the chemistry industry to close material loops and valorize materials that are waste in one process and produce another material out of it. So I think that is something that we have not fully explored yet, and I think it's a very good input. Yep.
Okay, more questions, please. Hands raised. Yep. This lady here, please.
Thanks for all your explanations. I'm Elise from NG Laborelec, so it's an energy provider. So I'm more like an end user of batteries. Of course, we look for better materials, also better circularity of materials, better reuse and so on, but also about safety and safety aspects is of importance. As mentioned by Michael Lippert before, we need also, of course, to increase the portfolio of technologies. To have a better safety could be also a way that where Europe can also be different than other parties. So what do you think about the future of technologies, the technologies we have today having better safety, and what are the future technology having, of course, also better safety, but probably less performances?
Okay, that's... Francesco.
Yeah, so yeah, I completely agree with the point. So and as I was saying before, I think we need to make it clear that we have different portfolio of innovation for sure in terms of electrical architecture, new BMS that could enhance, improve safety through, for example, have new strategy like adoption of EIS, new data that you can collect from the cell. This could be really improve in terms of research as a key strategy for safety. Then, of course, the most important is the new architecture. So how battery passport will marry the digital space, and how can really through the data space that the EU Commission is creating and improving AI algorithm could really improve safety through the data, but then also safety through mechanical architecture and thermal architecture. So in terms of thermal architecture, there are, I think, it's one of the most sensitive area of research to improve safety. And so really we need to dig in different type of solution to improve a better thermal management in a cost-effective way. So in our case, we always see technology as a transfer from other applications. So of course, high-performance computing and experience in data center, it's a tremendous background that we should leverage on for our improvement in thermal management for our battery system. And so I think we can study and start from there.
Okay, another question from the floor. Can I see hands? All right, yes, please. I see 1, 2, 3 here, so we'll try and get to those.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Venkat Pamidi. I'm a PhD student from Helmholtz Institute, Ulm, Germany. I work on sodium-ion battery cathode materials. I would like to know from this session that, like, are there any future plans with respect to sodium-ion battery manufacturing in Europe? Because we all know that they are currently the biggest alternatives for lithium-ion batteries, especially for grid storage. So in this line, are there any plans from big companies to manufacture sodium-ion batteries in a large scale?
Yeah, we have a number of SME companies in Europe based on European innovations for sodium, so there is hope. And of course, the big one that really announced that they will look into the manufacturing of sodium is the Cattle, the Chinese company, and they have also activities in Europe. So there is hope for Europe that we have our own innovations and can drive it.
Picking up on one of the key points of our Vice President on the innovation uptake and accelerators, I think this is a very important topic, really, to help those young companies starting on sodium ion really to accelerate and enable them to grow.
Okay, we had another question here in the middle, I think. Yeah.
Hello. I'm Mustafa Mohammadi. I'm from Sorbonne University. I'm a PhD student. So about Christina said us about being attractive, this network for us. I have a question that does Europe has the capability to work here for after training for us? Because do we have a hope for after training in this network, in this subject? And and another question about what you said about the Chinese company that they're coming in Europe. Am I correct? Okay. My other question is why Chinese companies should come here, because they can produce many things in China very cheap and without European tax. So these two questions is a little related. So do we have hope to work here in this network in Europe, in the batteries? Thank you.
Well, I think the answer to the first question is that we really want you to work in this network in Europe. And if you go in and, for instance, look at the activities with Battery 2030 Plus, it's a lot of things you could sort of profit from, and you can also contact, etc. When it comes to why Chinese and Korean, mainly Korean companies move into Europe, I think I have my personal view, and that is because we have said that we want production in Europe, and that's a very strong signal. Then you can sell in Europe. If you don't produce it in Europe, it will be maybe tougher.
And coming back on the importance of supporting regulatory framework, I think the proposal is really leading us in this direction that will enable Europe not only to compete on cost but also on sustainability. And I think this is another important factor. What we already see now brings a lot of Asian companies to Europe to be close to the offtake markets and to comply with this upcoming regulation. So it's not about producing the cheapest cells possible any longer. I think also from the public perception on the awareness on how things are produced, the traceability of materials becomes more and more important. And there the battery passport will play a very important role, and I think customers will start demanding sustainable produced batteries. So I'm not too worried about the cost-only competition.
Okay, I think we've time for just one last question from the floor.
Hi, I'm Chun Yang from DTU. I'm a PhD student. I have two questions. One is I can see there's like a trend to be more independent in Europe to do their own battery research production, and then the globalization is a little bit fading away from my observation, and how to rebuild this trust, because as what I can see, globalization gives the best efficiency, gives the best technology, like for the battery performance. And the second one is when we try to teach our bachelor or master student about battery, we are in the the power section, and we feel the framework of teaching the battery knowledge a little bit new and unmatured compared with the photovoltaic or wind. But I don't know if you have some suggestions, like how to teach the new generation, like what is the framework, how much they should know. Do they need to know how to use a battery? Do they need to know how to, do they need to understand the chemistry, or they just need to charge, discharge because you're in the power section?
May I answer the educational part first? How to teach the student? It depends on what student you are targeting. So since I've been teaching battery since the 1990s in Uppsala, G2 comes much later, we target the chemistry student. You must know your electrochemistry. It's within the compulsory courses at university level, and you know about materials, you know about organic chemistry, etc. If you target non-chemistry students, you go more for the systems level. You discuss that the chemistry is actually deciding what the batteries can do. So you actually target different groups with different messages, and that comes back to the value chain again. and you play with that value chain. I think that's important. And for the globalization, we as scientists, we claim that we are scientists, international scientists, and science is a peace language because it goes over barriers and cultures. So we will continue to go to international conferences and show how strong European research can be and pick up from the other groups that are also strong.
Yeah, and if I may on this one, don't get me wrong for what I said earlier about it's not us against them. It's indeed, we are in a global world and we cannot, I think there are indeed a lot of benefit of this, but we have to avoid really being naive and relying totally on other parts of the world. So we need also, if we do not make ourselves strong enough really to be also part of the game, then we will lose any power in discussing about the, you know, it's how you when you have to negotiate, you need also to have some strength in your hands. Otherwise, it's difficult, and that's really what I was willing to stress.
Yes, maybe some concluding remarks on this
these
one.
These good questions to wrap
just
up on.
to picking up on what Philip said, it's very, very important to continue also our international outreach and discussions. I think from EBA we have a memorandum of understanding to actually collaborate with the US. There's a similar initiative called LiBridge as well on several aspects, and I think to keep this discussion ongoing, what is happening in Korea and Japan and China, it's absolutely crucial for us also to advance. If we do not communicate, we will stagnate.
Francesco, can I get a final remark from you as well, either in response to the question or to the panel in general?
No, yeah, I think we really also, as Europe, as we are founded on a welfare state, do not forget also the social life cycle assessment. So we really need to engage more and more also not only the environmental sustainability that is of course a focus, but also to have a particular focus on the worker. We don't forget, I think this is very important. So the safety of the worker, but also that in the whole value chain, the workers that are contributing to this ecosystem will be respected in all the phases.
My last words. I'm very happy that we have such a clear picture of the situation, and that was not the case 5 years ago. It is now the case. We know about the stakeholders, about different expertise and the different level of involvement, and that is very, very important, I guess, for the near future. Yeah, my message is we have to build more conferences like this for collaboration, for discussion, for exchange of knowledge and experiences. And I'm a friend of spillover effects, of course, that companies work together and find their ways for very good collaboration and good business models. Yeah.
Thank you very much indeed to the whole panel. I'm sorry we didn't manage, even in the time allowed, to get to all your questions, and I know there were more questions online. Apologies that we didn't get to you as well, but we are going to take a break now, so there will be the opportunity for networking. Likewise online, I will encourage you to visit the exhibitors. They're waiting to net with you online, check out their booths and also the interactions possible on the platform. For the afternoon and for after the coffee break, there will be 2 tracks. You should be able to choose between improving BMS for the automotive industry, that will take place in this room, or solid-state battery from research to market, taking place in the aquarium room. So you can find your way to those rooms afterwards. And then we will have lunch, followed by 2 more breakout sessions in the afternoon. So keep an eye out for directions to where those are happening as well. A big round of applause, please, for our panelists.